I'm Bonnie, and this is the Tarot Table with Bonnie and Peter, where we lay the cards on the table and talk about life, tarot, and everything in between. So shuffle your deck, pull up a chair, and join us at the Tarot Table. Hi, I'm Bonnie.
And I'm Peter.
And this is the Tarot Table with Bonnie and Peter, where we lay the cards on the table and talk about life, tarot, and everything in between. Welcome to our first episode. We're so excited to have you here. And we're excited for you to join the conversation with Peter and I. In this episode, we're going to talk about a little bit about our background with tarot, how it sort of evolved for us, how we use tarot in everyday life. And then at the end of each episode, we're going to pull a card and give our own insights on what we see in that card. So I'm going to put it over to you, Peter. And can you just talk about how you started with tarot and your background and why you love this so much?
Sure. Look, I always think, the seed or, where the seed got planted in the tarot, I would have been pretty young. I think I probably was drawn to the tarot because it was a way to kind of stand out and be a little bit different. I was always interested in the weird stuff as a kid, witchcraft and UFOs and astrology and divining rods and palm reading. And, if there was a book on that in my local library, then that's where I was going. Right. And I just found my way. Oh, it would have been in the mid 80s in the occult shop in Toronto. And I bought a deck. And I bought a book. I seem to think it was Rachel Pollack's 78 Degrees of Wisdom. And it sort of took off from there. And I think for me, it's that combination of, there's a system with the tarot, but there's chaos with the tarot as well. And I think that sat well to, the 17-year-old me. Both that rebel kind of odd side, but really an opportunity to do some learning, but really an opportunity to do that through a system of chaos. And when I'd have been maybe 17, 18, 19, I do readings, at a party, sometimes just to try and impress somebody, and then I got married pretty young to my first wife, started a family, and I didn't go back to the tarot. Probably the early 2000s when I started to connect to a more kind of pagan spiritual community. And I mean, I would study solo, I would attend workshops, I would listen to early versions of podcasts. We're talking about the early noughties. It was a great pagan podcast called Dio Shadow, which I remember really well. And I just inhale that. But then I started a professional tarot practice in 2004, 2005, and I do consultations. I teach. I was part of the Toronto Tarot Symposium. I attended the Reader Studio in New York back in 2010. I was even the resident tarot practitioner at Tree Haven, which is, was a metaphysical store in Erin, Ontario, which is near where I live. And then I stopped when I actually became the principal of the school that was across the street from the shop. And then I put it on pause again and kind of dug back in 2017, 2018 under a different name. And now I teach and I mentor. I actually do quarterly episodes on my wife's YouTube channel. We chat a little bit about, the upcoming tarot energy for the next 3 months. And she talks about it from an astrological aspect. And then personally, I'm an eclectic kind of daily tarot user. I do everything from ritual type work around some, power dates. Usually for me, it's like strong full moons or strong new moons or points of the year. But I love I'll call it daily card draw. I don't know, an almost daily card draw. Nobody is perfect. I reflect on the upcoming energy of the day. So I always know which cards are linked to whatever current day of the calendar it is, through either decan work or, through astrological links through the major arcana. And then I always have something where I'm really digging in deep. So I just attended a seminar, a couple of days ago on the archetypal tarot. It was fantastic. I know you and I are attending the Tarot and Lenormand conference in Kingston coming up later this year, and
Yes.
I'm doing this 50-day look at the 40 cards of the Minor Arcana that is kind of based on both a Jewish and Western esoteric Kabbalistic tradition. So, there's always kind of something simple on the go, and there's always something pretty deep on the go. So that's kind of my tarot practice in a nutshell from both a professional and a personal perspective. Bonnie, what about you? What either drives you to the tarot? What does your tarot practice look like so that people get a sense?
I'm glad that you shared that story, Peter, because mine is very similar in that respect. Ever since I was really little, I was very drawn to like the metaphysical, right? And like things maybe that we can't see, and definitely drawn to like divination practices, just like you, like tarot or the rune stones, like all of those things. And my very first tarot deck I was a teenager. And I think I got it for Christmas, and I also got the rune stones as well to go with that. But always fascinated with astrology and dream interpretation. I have like really crazy dreams. So all of those things really interest me, but nobody else around me sort of shared that same interest. So I kind of thought I was a little bit weird. I didn't have a tarot book to go with my tarot deck. I think and I'm pretty sure it was a Rider-Waite-Smith deck that I had. And it just came, with a little white book. And I think the interpretations in that book sometimes are a little bit, daunting, a little bit scary. And then I think over the years, I just became afraid of the tarot, to be honest. So I didn't pursue a tarot practice, but I was always fascinated with cards, and not so much using them for divination, but for like, what do I need to know right now? Like, what can help me make this decision? So always going into metaphysical stores, looking for cards. And over the years, I acquired a lot of, angel decks and oracle card decks. So all of that really always fascinated me. But then I was sort of called to, I was taking a yoga teacher training at the time. And at that time, I had this opportunity to take this card certification course. And it intrigued me because I use the cards for my own, self-development. And I thought, well, maybe this is something that I could offer to other people. And in that course, you could sort of choose if you wanted to follow oracle cards or angel cards or tarot. And I was not drawn to the tarot at all. But I was like, I want to create a card reading practice. But with the oracle cards, I was always going to the books. Like I always had to read the interpretation of the card. So I went to a store, our favorite store in Orangeville, Healing Moon, and I'm thinking I need to find a deck that I can really resonate with and really get to know, so that if I want to do readings for other people, I'm not constantly, having to look up the definitions of the cards. So Megan, one of the owners, came over and she said, "Oh, can I help you?" And I sort of explained my situation to her. And she said, "Well, I think you'd be a good candidate for the tarot." And I said, "Oh, really?" And she said, "Yeah, it's a system of 78 cards. And once you get to know those cards, you can read any tarot deck." And I went, "Oh." And I sort of have I love to learn and I love to memorize things. And so then I was sort of intrigued by that. So I bought my second tarot deck. I don't know what happened to my first one. And she recommended the Light Seers Tarot by Chris Ann. So I took that home. And ever since that point, I've been enamored, obsessed maybe with the tarot, because it brings so much clarity and it has this ability to really go deep. And those cards that I used to think were really scary, I got to know them in a different way and realize that the interpretation or the picture on that card doesn't have to be a literal interpretation of what's going on. So I fell in love with the practice. I use it every day in my own practice. So I generally pull 3 cards. It helps me to see patterns, my own patterns that I'm dealing with. And it's the best tool that I've used for my own growth, my own discovery, my own healing journey. It just has this way of really presenting information in an accessible way, like in a way that I don't have to be afraid of. So, and I think I also do readings for other people as well. One of the main things I love to do is help people come up with an intention based on what's, in the cards. I use it as part of my meditation practice and, retreats or classes that I lead. So I love the idea of bringing the tarot to people that maybe wouldn't necessarily think about that as a tool for self-reflection or their own healing journey or whatever path that they're on. And apart from that, it's fun. I love it so much. It's,
Well,
it's so exciting.
and you mentioned, because I think the whole for when we had talked about wanting to um, get together and create a podcast, I think we had talked, one of the common goals we had is around that accessibility of the tarot to people, that there's a real veil of mystery and fear at times around the use of the tarot. And I think both of us, probably in very similar ways, but in some different ways as well, we really do use the tarot as part of our everyday life, that it's a tool in our toolbox that that gets us through might be challenging times. It might be simple things like daily reflections or affirmations, but it's a constant companion in a way that shouldn't kind of breed fear and shouldn't have that veil of mystery. You mentioned our favorite metaphysical shop, though, because I guess I don't know if you want, because you want to tell people
How we
how
met?
we met. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'll tell you my side of the story and then you can tell us
Mine.
your side
Okay,
of the
fair
story.
enough.
Uh, so I was very new to tarot. So our favorite metaphysical store holds these tarot get-togethers where we can get together and people can practice reading tarot for each other. And I was quite new to the tarot at the time, but had been studying it. And I'd signed up to practice reading tarot. And I thought, what am I doing? Like I've never read for another person before. Maybe my husband and my kids, but uh, not a stranger. Absolutely not. So I kind of forced myself to really study all of the cards and think, okay, I just need to know one thing about each card. So if I'm reading for somebody, then I can at least talk about one thing. So it was great for me because it helped me to learn the cards. So I go to this tea and tarot and I met Peter. Peter was sitting at my table. There were some different tables and we all had to introduce ourselves and say, what our experience was with the tarot. So of course I was like, yeah, I'm a beginner. And then Peter tells this story that he has all this experience. I'm like, oh wow. And then it's time to share or to practice. And who is my partner? My first partner is Peter, the person in the room who had the most experience. So I wasn't petrified by you and your personality because you were, we were talking beforehand and I wasn't afraid of that, but I was like, what on earth am I going to tell this man that he doesn't know about this card? So that's my side of the story. I don't know if you remember it
Yeah.
like that, Pete.
Well, my side's a little bit different, but no, because I mean, I had been going to the Tarot and Tea for quite some time, different iterations that they had had in the past, and I mean, I definitely remember us sitting down, like over the tarot, and it wasn't my first time having gone, but I remember a couple of things. One, the ease in which we would talk about about tarot and everyday life. We got along really well, I think, right from the get go. But you had a real affinity to the cards, because like I remember you saying, "Oh, I'm completely new," and then not that I had an internal eye roll, because I think the opportunity to go to an experience like Tarot and Tea is a great way for everybody to be able to sharpen to sharpen a skill set. But it was what caught me was the, yeah, I'll say, real affinity with the cards. Like, you had an ease with the tarot that, for me, I'm like, oh, there's no way that this is somebody who is a self-proclaimed beginner. And then I remember talking about the very first cards that got laid down, and then the insight that you provided there. So I don't know, and I remember as well that when we talked, that we really had a very similar almost foundation to, well, what does the tarot do? And I think we had a real practical approach to the integration of tarot in sort of daily life. So I don't know, I mean, I remember us, and then it wasn't long after where we're like, oh, you know and then we started getting together on our own for coffee so that we could chat, tarot. And I remember sometimes we'd be like, oh, 3.5 hours has gone by, and we've been chatting pretty easily. And then, of course, the idea of doing this, I think, to be able to help others understand that, there's not this big mystery, that it's not, there's nothing to fear. There's nothing, to, there's nothing to walk away from, when like that, it is a very approachable kind of tool. So I don't know. That's what I
Yeah,
would, and yeah,
absolutely.
and still continue. I love going to tarot and tea. So, yeah, shout out to Healing Moon.
Yes. Well, I remember telling Megan, the owner or one of the owners of the store, I'm like, when I get to go to tea and tarot, it's like Christmas morning for me because I get to talk to other people about the tarot and we get to practice. And it's, people are coming together for this idea of wanting to get clarity or maybe seeing things from a different perspective or noticing patterns that keep coming up. And everybody's there for that same reason. And I think it's such an accessible tool. And, if people are curious about the tarot, I think tarot finds you. I don't think you one day wake up and go, oh, I'm going to start reading tarot. Like, I think like it somehow weaves its way and it calls you. And if anybody is curious about that, I think I'm hoping that this podcast will help people to understand that it's just everyday people who, are interested in something that's going to help them get greater insights or just sort of maybe even help them make decisions. It is accessible and it doesn't have to be this mysterious and terrifying
Yeah,
practice. We can,
exactly.
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, you didn't interrupt me at all.
Yeah. So if we're going to look at practice, then
Mhm.
should we do a card draw? Should we talk about each of us drawing a card, um, to, kind of provide our interpretation? And you had mentioned, Chris Ann's, um, deck. Do you want to start off with, like
With
shuffling
picking
a
a
card?
card?
Yeah, shuffling and drawing.
Yes.
I'm gonna
Yeah. And I
I'll
think
shuffle my deck while
you'll
you're
shuffle
going as
yours.
well.
Okay. I'll shuffle mine too. And people, our listeners can hear us shuffling our cards. Um, I think the great what do I want to say? Like the beauty of us doing this together is that people, we may pull a card and you may see that card from one way, and I may also see the card in that way, but we can look at it with a different lens. And that's what I'm hoping that this will help people too, is that, see, there's not one way to read the card. And we've talked about this in the past, how you say that each card has a container of sort of the general meaning or the energy around that card, but how you interpret that can go in different ways and it can be very nuanced. So we're hoping that by us pulling these cards will sort of help people understand it doesn't have to be black or white. Like you can interpret the cards in a way that feels good for you. And over time, you'll develop that relationship with, when you see that card, what does that card really mean for you? So, okay. Okay. I pulled the two
Ah,
of
2 of 1.
wands.
All right.
Okay, so do you want me to tell you what I think about this card and then
Yeah.
you tell me?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I I love this. I think
Yeah,
it's really appropriate for our first episode.
I agree.
When I see the two of wands, I see it as an opportunity to well, I like to look at the cards and I like to see the card before this. So the card before the two of wands is the ace of
Mhm.
wands. And you think about, you're being presented with an opportunity, a new beginning, about something that you're really passionate about, something that lights you up, something that really inspires you. So it's this idea and this opportunity that you're being given. And the two of wands is like, what are you going to do with this opportunity? Are you going to stay in your comfort zone and sort of do the things that you always do? Or are you going to take this out there and sort of leave your comfort zone and present this in a way that's kind of to like a bigger audience? So if I look at that in the lens of us doing this podcast, it's like, well, I could be presented with this opportunity to talk about tarot, but I could just stay in my comfort zone and sort of not really do anything about it, or I can put it out there and sort of see where this takes me. So the Two of Wands is really an invitation to see what you're ready for when you're presented with an opportunity. What are you going to do with that? Are you going to do the things that you're comfortable doing, or are you actually going to take that out and sort of see where that leads you?
Yeah, that's interesting. I wouldn't have much to add there. Can I see the card again? Because I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
although I think I have my version of that deck there. Yeah, it's that I'm always drawn because the Rider-Waite-Smith would be the the deck that I would usually use, and I know that this one's based on it. I'm always drawn to the world because I
Mhm.
always think, as you said, it's that idea of taking something out there. So I do see that Two of Wands as almost a card, of pause, where it's like I'm here with this idea, with this kind of passion project, and I could be okay just sort of stopping it. I'm holding the world in my hands here. I've actually got something that's pretty big and good, and perhaps satisfying from a passionate perspective, because we're in the realm of fire. We're in the suit of wands, but also we are two in a journey that starts, as you said, at ace and goes all the way to 10 in the minor arcana. And I'm like, that's the very start of a journey. If you don't take this out and test drive this somewhere, take it out into the world that's kind of shown on this card, that may be an opportunity, a significant opportunity that is missed. And even from a numerical perspective, no, well, what you're missing if you stop at 2 is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're missing the rest of the journey. And I think to me that Two of Wands really speaks of that energy as well. That it might feel, and you use the word comfortable, it might feel comfortable staying here, but that isn't necessarily what you're being called to do. That there may be a calling to take that, project of creativity. Again, creativity really does sit, I think of the queen of creativity, right? The Queen of Wands. Creativity really does sit inside that suit, is to take that project of creativity, that passion project, that work that sits in fire, and to bring it forward. So that's the only thing I would add. But I love that image. I think the same. I've literally got my little lights here tin is sitting, right here beside me as well. So it's a beautiful, beautiful deck. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I've got on that one. So yeah, for those of you that are, you've got, some different kind of interpretations coming from both of us, to put in, as you mentioned, to put in your container of meaning for, for the Two of Wands. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
I'm gonna use the Rider-Waite-Smith.
Okay.
Shuffle it too.
And funny that those are the same decks we used that that very first
The
reading we
first
did. I
reading.
used the Light Seers and you
I know.
used your
My Rider
Rider-Waite-Smith.
Waite.
So
And it which is funny because in when I go into that tarot and tea space, I often pull away from the Rider-Waite-Smith, just because it's the deck that I use mostly for teaching, and I use it for client work. But it was just something that kind of drew me to use it. So it's funny that we're going here as well. Oh, well, will you look at this? So I went right to Major Arcana,
oh,
right? And drew the Empress, right? So if we're talking about, and if we're looking at applying this, to our situation, then we're talking about a situation here. Well, one, so I always go, we're talking about Major Arcana. And to me, I always think the Major Arcana in the tarot is a series of cards that say, pay attention to what I'm telling you, right? Because it's that section of the card where these big ideas come from. And this is that idea of Empress. So, this is that Venusian, abundant fecundity, that experience that brings life forward. That, if we talked about a passion project in creativity, then this is a project that is pregnant with creativity. It is literal creation. We almost have the card, that personifies that big creation, and it's one that comes from a space of compassion, and caring, and empathy. All those Venusian words, so, words that would describe Venus. And then I also think of that concept of richness that sits there with the Empress. And again, if we look at that card, we've got sheaths of wheat, and we have a lush forest and, lush ground behind the Empress. We have this beautiful flowing gown. We've got this rich red, fabric. You can almost feel the velvet, if you were sitting on this throne, you can almost feel, the richness of the fabric that's there as well. So, when I draw a card like this one, again, a couple of things, major arcana, pay attention. But when it's the Empress, and the last thing, Empress always reminds me of springtime. I
Mm.
I actually have, I think I've got an old blog post where I talk about the Empress in spring, because for us in the Northern Hemisphere here, that idea of life coming out of the ground, that bringing forth of things that were nothing, that, were kind of the seed of an idea, and having them go through a period of gestation. So, for us, I think of this project that, started, when we had this conversation, and then has kind of turned into an actual first episode as we're having today. I think the Empress actually bodes well for that. It's like, it's that start of growth, that pathway towards creativity. I don't know, anything to add around this wonderful card draw, I'm gonna say.
I love the Empress, so I'm quite thrilled that you pulled that card. And yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. It's this idea of giving birth to something. And I like to think of things metaphorically. So it's like, what is it that you're giving birth to? And once you do that, what do you have to do with that? You have to nurture it. You have to love it. You have to, raise it,
Mhm.
all these things. And when you're starting with something or you have an idea, it's like this opportunity to be creative and to manifest anything that you want, really. Like the Empress is really about that, and really grounding yourself, right? Like she's outside, she's in nature. So really taking that idea, grounding it, and nurturing it and loving it so that it grows into what it is that you want it to grow into. And it's funny that it goes with the Two of Wands, because if we talk about an opportunity and creativity and, making the decision to put this out there, well, you've got the Empress energy now to be like, I can create anything that I want. I have this ability. And it's this idea of lush and abundance. And yeah, the Empress makes me so happy. So
That's
I think it's so fitting that you picked that card. And yeah, Empress energy is amazing. So,
Yeah,
and three comes after two. So that's
right.
funny that it's kind of
It's sequential. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
for sure. Right. And still, from a tarot perspective, or even numerologically, still at the start of the journey, right? Three is still, a long way away from the end. So
Exactly.
we had said we would take a look at two cards today. So it kind of comes to the talking about end, right? Kind of comes to the end of what we're going to do. So if people wanted to find you and the things that you're working on, and how would they go about doing that?
So you can find me at breathewithbonnie.com. So that's breathe with an E. Sometimes people are like, I can't find your website because they spell it breath. So it's breathewithbonnie.com. And all my contact information is on there. You can email me. And if I'm, if I have any events or anything going on, then I post it there. I also have a blog. And if you'd like to join my email list, you get a free meditation with that. And then I send out, monthly inspiration based on a card reading. And yeah, just keeping you updated on what I'm doing. How about you, Peter? How can
Perfect.
people find you?
Yeah, easiest way to find me is, again, probably via my website, although I am on Instagram and on Facebook. Easiest spot, Peter White Tarot. So for website, it's peterwhitetarot.com. And then for, Insta and Facebook, it's Peter White Tarot. I've got, classes coming up. People, same thing, can sign up to my email list. Um, yeah, and that would be that easiest spot to be able to find me. So
I also have Instagram, so that's Breathe with Bonnie, or at Breathe with Bonnie. I'm not very active at the moment on there, but hoping in the future maybe that will change. So,
when you said you have a blog, I'm like, yeah, on my website, I blog as well. And I'm like, I think the website has been there since 2009, which is a long time. But then I think I have 100 posts. And I'm like, if I looked at that and divided that over the course of a long period of time, yeah, prolific blogger I'm not, although, I do love to write, I just don't do it very often. We'll also include all that information in the show notes below. So wherever you happen to be listening to us on whatever platform, you can take a look there and you can find out about us there as well. And, I want to say thank you so much for coming along on our first journey, our first attempt, our, passion-based project that, as the Empress says, we hope is going to grow. And Bonnie, I'll turn things over to you to kind of take us to the end here.
Thank you. Yeah, I um what Peter says, I'm really excited that you're here listening to us. We hope that this podcast will help you find inspiration and see the cards maybe from a different perspective. Or if you're curious, just, maybe buying your first deck and checking out all the wonderful magic that tarot has to offer. So we invite you to pull up a chair and join us at the tarot table, bring your cards, shuffle your deck, and see what inspiration lies ahead for you. And we will see you on the next episode.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.